Morning. I'll introduce you real quickly, Niraj. Niraj Bhargava is going to be providing a presentation on artificial intelligence and his role with YRP over the last year and where we're going as an organization. Niraj is the founder and CEO of a company called NuEnergy. He's worked very closely with us. He's worked very closely with Greg Sinitsi from Business Intelligence, who chairs our AI governance committee. And it's through Niraj's insight and leadership and really his ability to train our governance committee. We're at a position where we're going to be very close to launching an artificial intelligence procedure that the chief will touch on very briefly after Niraj's presentation. So I'll pass it over to Niraj. Thank you very much.
Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. Mr. Chair, Chief McSween, members of the board, thank you for inviting me. I'm looking forward to the conversation, and it's a delight to be working with you all. I'll start by just saying something that I think you're all aware of, but AI is a transformational tool, and it has significant implications to all parts of our community and absolutely to your important jobs in law enforcement. So I'm here to speak about AI and AI governance and our work we're doing together with YRP. But I do appreciate actually coming second in the presentations this morning, because I think the context of the previous presentation really is relevant to how AI should be considered within the context of your important mandate. You know, crime severity, such a huge mandate you all have on addressing this, but at the same time, making sure we build public trust. And when we talk about a transformational tool like artificial intelligence, it's affecting all parts of what we're doing, whether it's criminal activity or law enforcement or our community and the crimes that were talked about earlier. So with that, thank you, Chief McSween, for your leadership on this topic, because in our previous conversations, you mentioned right away, public consultation is so important to YRP on this topic of AI, collaboration, but leadership as well. So with that, yes, I'm Niraj Bhargava, representing a company, NuEnergy.ai, headquartered in Ottawa. I'm here with Richard Barber, but our team is governance and AI experts, but we have had a focus on law enforcement. Hopefully my mouse will work. My opening message, though, is that while there's lots of fears and risks of AI, AI can be trusted. However, there's a very important however to that, and we have to have the right guardrails. So AI is a tool that's in all parts of our society, and absolutely could be a huge part of the focused requirements when we look at the data of where there's criminal activity, where we want to address things more effectively, and it is a tool that we may apply in certain ways. But again, guardrails are a critical ingredient. But 7 years ago, when we formed NuEnergy.ai and focused on law enforcement and public on use of AI and guardrails at NuEnergy.ai, we learned at that time that the risks were really significant and concerning. But today, things have changed a lot, and I think people are aware that now the biggest risk of AI is waiting to engage with the technology. There's a competitive world. There's a world around us going on, and we'll be left behind if we don't embrace the technology in the right places in the right areas. So I know as a board member myself, and the responsibility of boards includes risks. There are risks with AIs, but I would encourage your risk register to include, using AI in a way that keeps up with the needs as we watch the world around us. So NuEnergy.ai, just a quick introduction. We are a Canadian sovereign company, Ottawa headquartered, working with the federal government of Canada. 2018, people were wondering, AI governance, is this really an important topic? Certainly things have changed a lot in the last few years. And so we are leaders in AI governance that have focused on law enforcement, but we also have been working with the government of Canada and have been graduated out of a testing program. We have a software platform as well as AI governance solutions for organizations and have been tested by the RCMP, by other parts of the federal government, and have been approved for full deployment on AI governance in the government of Canada. We have a platform frameworks, standards, looking globally on these topics of guardrails for AI and trust measurement techniques. That earlier presentation was helpful for me to see the context of how important data is, metrics are, measurements, and so with AI as well, we need to measure it to manage it. You'll hear me say that again later in this presentation. But how do we do that? We co-create the appropriate guardrails with our client organizations, and we're delighted to have worked with Greg and Superintendent Salia and the team here, the governance committee, on education and building policies that make sense for YRP and frameworks. So that's what our business is all about. And we are also independent third-party reviewers, because a prime minister of the UK last year said, AI firms cannot mark their own homework. So if you're getting AI from vendors or from embedding it in your technology, there's some terrific opportunities, but third-party reviews may sometimes be very appropriate. And we'll talk a little bit about what AIs need that kind of third-party assessment. But that's what our company does with a faculty from around the world and subject matter expertise. We are unique in that we are focused on law enforcement. And so I mentioned our work with the federal government, but just to give you a little context, I have been a speaker with Interpol and the UNICRI in Singapore and Lisbon in New York. We've spoken at the IACP, and we've spoken with the CACP board. And so we are really focused on being partners to law enforcement on the use of AI, governing AI, and have learned a lot as we have with the team here at YRP and this previous presentation. But really the topic of applying AI in law enforcement is a very challenging topic, but a very important one. And I appreciate, again, the opportunity to speak with you all and applaud you for including this topic on your busy agenda. There's so many important topics you're looking at. I'm going to go a little bit deeper in my opening presentation. I look forward to questions, but I didn't suggest that this is going to be a technical presentation. That said, I encourage you all to not concern yourself with not being an AI expert. None of us are. It's a moving target. It's changing all the time. Even the experts are saying, we don't understand where it's going. So don't over worry about the technical elements here, but do concern yourself on how it's developed and how it's used. But just briefly, I'll share that this diagram is a simple version of AI, looking at how AI is built. Really what AI is a prediction machine. It's an ability to look at a large amount of data and iterate with data and look at predictions and identify models and algorithms that can predict the future of how by looking at large amounts of data. So this is a machine learning diagram. There's many different species of AI, but I've worked with a lot of boards, and the way I try to summarize it rather than talk technical is that really there's a life cycle in AI that's a little different than other technologies. And so we talk about data collection to train a model. You develop a model, you deploy it, and then it drifts. So this is a dynamic technology that is not a one-time go, no go. Does this technology work? Let's use it. It's a dynamic technology that's built on data and models and applied in very significant scenarios as well. So when we talk about the governance of AI, we have to talk about governing it all the way through the life cycle. And there really is a large data element as well on the topic of AI. But I wanted to just take it down a level quickly on data, because data comes in a lot of different places when you talk about artificial intelligence. It's really the training of the model. So how is the model trained? If you're utilizing AI, if it's available to you, it was been trained by the original developers. Do we know on what data it was trained? But then when you start deploying it, you talk about using operational data, your data of criminal activity or your community's data, et cetera, can be applied. And then you need to recognize that post-deployment, the AI can drift. And essentially, when I talk about drift, the models are learning models. These algorithms will continue to learn as new data is provided. So you might get a different answer from ChatGPT next week as you did last week, because it's continuing to learn. So there's model drift, but there's also usage drift. Are we using it the way it was actually developed? And are we using it in other places? Is there policy drift? where there's legislation has changed, and now what we thought was acceptable is not acceptable. So there's a lot of different kinds of drift in AI that we need to consider when we talk about guardrails. Stepping back for a moment, this is a slide borrowed from Interpol, and over the last few years, there's a global movement on responsible AI and collaboration around the world. The punchline here is AI may be the ace up our sleeve to ensure the safety and security of our global community. It's a hugely applicable technology to a lot of the pursuits of law enforcement, and we know that criminal activity is utilizing this technology, and so we need to arm ourselves with the capabilities of this technology. There's a number of use cases identified in this Interpol slide that are significant, but I'm not here to suggest that these are the right ones for YRP, but these are topics that have been considered as ways that AI could apply in the significant challenges of law enforcement. You can see some of those here: predicting violence, identifying persons and crowds. But my message here, as we've learned together with the YRP team, is that public trust is so critical. We need to be very careful to have public consultation as we build the frameworks and policies of what AI is effective for our community. And we need to classify the AI and make sure that we have the right guardrails on any applications. So while there is a huge opportunity to leverage the technology for law enforcement, we need to balance it with public trust, as I know as members of this board, as well as mayors. It's all about serving our communities, but again, the community is wanting us to be safe. They're also wanting to leverage technology, but of course there are risks that we need to have guardrails on. So what are some of those risks? Again, I'm sure they're in your mind as soon as you heard that we're going to talk about AI. So not only are there risks, but there are headlines of mistakes made by the utilization of AI. So these are a few generic examples, but we'll talk specifically to law enforcement in a moment. But privacy breaches, that data, was there consent and informed consent in the usage of the data? And there's obviously lots of privacy legislation and requirements. Ethical questions about unintended uses of AI, what it was trained for. Cambridge Analytics is an example of election activities in 2016 in the US. Bias in algorithms, huge topic. When we talk about historical data training prediction, well, that historical data may have demographics or information that creates a biased algorithm. And there's many examples of gender bias in predictions of on credit card fraud, etc. So there's many examples in the headlines of issues, explainability, transparency, and governance. And when we got involved with law enforcement, the headline was about facial recognition, Clearview AI, was the technology the issue, or was the governance the issue when we deployed facial recognition without necessarily understanding where the data came from and how it was being deployed and in what circumstances? So a good governance will really avoid these headlines and crises. And I again applaud Greg's team, Superintendent Salia, and the work here on getting the committee educated and setting up the right policies. This slide is borrowed from Toronto Police. They're working on this topic, as are many agencies, and they shared that we need to classify AI. And this slide we co-presented with the IACP in the US about recognizing that AI, we don't need to consider it one technology that needs certain guardrails. It really is various flavors of technology. We need to think about the right governance and guardrails for different levels of risk. So there's many different applications of AI in law enforcement, and we don't want to overdo it and say that we were going to come to the board every time we use AI. There's many applications that are safe, appropriate, as long as we follow policy, as long as we have the right level of education. Let's leverage the technology, but there are a number of use cases that need another level of oversight and governance governance as well. We're getting into that. The work we've been doing in partnership with YRP has been over the last year, where we've done a custom developed education program for the governance committee here and the organization, with a series of education programs around use cases and what law enforcement's doing, and how to build a policy and framework for an organization like YRP. We had a workshop on developing policies, and we're very pleased that there's a draft policy. We haven't had a chance to review, but as partners, we are looking to be third-party reviewers and subject matter experts in your activity here as well. So one of the takeaways, though, I shared earlier, and I shared certainly with our team and the education programs, is that like the adage in many parts of business and organizations, if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. And so we need to make sure that we have the right metrics and measurements on artificial intelligence and its use, and identifying with our communities, our public, our stakeholders, what are the questions, what are the risks, what are the trust elements that people care about, and then let's measure and make sure that we're within the guardrails of what's acceptable to our organization. So measurement is certainly a message from NuEnergy.ai, and I do believe we're on the right track here at YRP for leveraging this technology. So just describing a little bit about the good work that the committee here has been doing, and the leadership of YRP. We have recognized that we at YRP want to triage and classify AI, so we have the right governance and guardrails. And what we've identified is that, and this is a simplification of the work, but really there's a spectrum here, a continuum, that from a very low risk to very high risk, there's different levels of guardrails. So low risk, let's make sure there's training. What is AI? How do we use it? What are acceptable uses of AI and policy? And then support it, register our uses, track our uses. That's a good way of oversight. Whereas when you get into the higher risks, let's make sure there's committee oversight with access to subject matter experts. Again, you guys, you folks are experts in such an important area. Having expertise in all parts of AI isn't likely to happen, so having ways to access subject matter experts. And then there's a level of risk where you really could value an independent third-party assessment, and making sure that the governance questions of the public get asked, and we look for good data to measure this. And then there's other times, and it should come to the board, and we should have a framework of what is acceptable, because again, there are technologies that can really help focus our attention on the data we saw earlier, but we need to make sure we ask ourselves the question about the technology. Is it biased? Is there privacy issues? Is it explainable? And there are many use cases that you will probably say is not acceptable, and let's make sure we have guardrails to not go there in the use of AI. Public transparency all the way along is something I've heard from Chief McSween, and I applaud and encourage that we do want to make sure that the public's involved, but it's not about the technology. It's really about the uses, the questions, what does trust look like, and how do we measure it to people's satisfaction, so we monitor it and leverage it where it makes sense. So our learnings as NuEnergy.ai working with YRP is that we really do encourage and need a YRP-specific policy and framework for governing AI with public consultation. There's a lot of room for collaboration, as we've talked about, Chief McSween, with other agencies. We've talked to the board at CACP, and there's a lot of need, but the leadership is required, and then collaborating, because this is, again, across regions as well. But training is important for the board and important for staff to understand what it is and what isn't, where is it acceptable to use, having a protocol for assessment of certain use cases. Another topic that's come up with the federal government, and I'm sure it's come up with yourselves, is Canadian sovereignty. The AI stack may have dependencies on foreign uses of data and technology that might, in today's geopolitics, have risks as well. So understanding the AI stack is important, and registering the uses, data governance, clarifying the guardrails. Again, I think as fiduciary members of the board, asking good questions, making sure you have guardrails is what I think most communities are expecting. Quickly, I'm going to touch on a few use case examples NuEnergy.ai has a software platform that tracks and measures categories of AI and questions and metrics over time with a trust score on AI. But it's really important that we measure it over time. So I heard the conversation earlier. Those trend lines are really important on AI. But the first use case that we dove into with the law enforcement was around facial recognition. The technology was very effective for Caucasian males. The first flag that went up was a privacy commissioner said the data was not approved. It was Facebook data training and algorithms without people's consent. But the biases were not understood because this was a very effective technology on Caucasians, but people of color, it was not that effective. And so people hadn't measured it and applied it without understanding the data and the measurement. So that's a use case that I think has been looked at quite heavily in law enforcement. I heard the conversation about human trafficking and child trafficking, and I applaud the efforts here, but there are AI technologies on the internet for identifying human trafficking and some of those elements. But we looked at some AI, and unfortunately, the AI was a black box. We didn't have access to the training data. We didn't know if it had biases and how it was developed. So do we want to apply effective technology for such an important topic? Yes, but not all technology is acceptable. Is it explainable to a judge? How did you make this decision? Oh, the AI told me. We need that human oversight. We need to make sure we augment the intelligence. So human trafficking AI, yes, if we have it with the right guardrails. There are many other use cases I can speak to if there's questions, but we play a third-party role. Hallucinations, huge topic in generative AI that you need to check your data and can it augment you and improve your productivity? Absolutely, but hallucinations are really important. And there are cases in Ontario law of judges seeing data being presented by lawyers that was hallucinations from generative AI. So many use cases we've applied our methods to put guardrails on, and we're delighted that YRP is heading in this direction as well. So I'm ready for Q&A. I do have one last slide and can come back to any of these topics if there's questions, but we do have recommended next steps. I think we're on a good track here with a policy and have third-party review where it makes sense. AI literacy and governance oversight processes, the board, a framework of when it should come to the board and what's acceptable. Again, I wouldn't suggest we over-govern it, but we don't want to under-govern it too. There's many use cases that do need extra eyes and questions before we approve it. Let me pause there. Hopefully this is helpful, and I look forward to the discussion.
Thank you very much for your presentation. I know members will have some questions. You spoke about AI literacy, and this is we're just touching. I've done a little bit of, I had to keep up my qualifications, so I had to do PDU, so I did it in AI. And the experts out there, they talk about the levels, and some say there's 4, some say there's 10, and then there's the types, the 3, some say 3, but we're in the very narrow intelligence right now, the beginning. And they're saying that this is going to be extremely powerful.
Yep.
And that we talked about, you said the previous presentation, it's all about the data, and it's all about somebody validating what AI is telling us is correct, not blindly taking it. Once you've set up a model that works and it's been validated, it will help tremendously, but it's getting to that point.
Right.
So I know Member Purchell wants to ask some questions.
This is the future, obviously. It's an extraordinary series of opportunities, but it's an extraordinary series of threats. And the threats come in the form of both the impact and the speed of this technology. We are not even close to managing its impact, but we're really being overwhelmed by its speed. I do a lot of work in this area in another context other than law enforcement, but Certainly, increasingly, we've been thinking about law enforcement. You left us with an interesting thought, and I'm going to leave you with an interesting thought as well. If you can't measure it, you can't manage it. But if you can't understand it, you can't control it.
Mm-hmm.
And the real question is, and you're quite right, we're moving from narrow intelligence to general intelligence to super intelligence. How quickly does that come, and what is our capacity to enforce governance or governance or ask any meaningful questions? And the answer is there are no answers to any of that.
Mm-hmm.
This is a blundering into a future we do not control. And that is going to be an inordinate challenge and an inordinate opportunity. But I inclined to believe, on the basis of a technology review we did last night, we won't be able to control this over time. And that has extraordinary implications for all of us.
I'm happy to comment on these. Comments are very helpful. You know, on the AI literacy, you know, I think we know we need human in the loop. We need to make sure it's augmented its productivity, but yes, it's not going to make decisions for us. We need to make the decisions, and the literacy is really important. But to your point, you know, I have learned, you know, to your point about understand to control. I like your message. The AI is scaling so quickly. AI governance has to scale as well. And so we need to think about how we can scale governance. You know, our fiduciary responsibility as board members is to ask good questions, and we have a duty of care. And so, you know, we need to accelerate that care element to the extent we can. And there are ways to get ahead of the curve as much as possible, but it is moving so quickly. And so, you know, again, it's not a choice of, well, maybe we won't do AI for a while. You know, it's there, it's everywhere today. And so engaging is what I would add to your helpful comment.
Member Carlucci, and before you go, this thing is what, January 9th, 2007 was when it first dawned, and look, everybody now around the world have these, and it's a walking computer. Like, it's no longer a phone.
Yeah, it's listening to us right now.
It is. Member Carlucci.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for the presentation. Thank you for making me understand the guard railing. But my question is, AI, what it is? As far as I'm concerned, we have a chief of police here. We have deputies. We have superintendent. We have the total force. That's AI. That's how I see it. When you put information together and it's not controlled and it's run by whoever runs it, it creates a disaster. You're going to manipulate and make everybody else slave of that system, which is, as a human being, I trust my chief of police. God give him the AI that he has between his head and the rest of the people. And we have that here. I agree that they have to communicate. They have to get all these and these what's happening in the world, and they should be in top of their hands. But to have a system that tells them what to do, we're not there. I'm not for that at all, because we have to think as human beings, and we're the one that have to protect this Mother Earth. We have to protect our human race, not push of a button.
So
this is my feeling.
Yeah. So that's where this data validation and what comes out. But to give you a quick, so a room, boathouse, took a picture, asked AI, extend the room out 8 feet, put glass at the end. Back comes a picture of the full extension. And then it's submit drawings for planning. And out comes the planning drawings for that. That's the power of AI nowadays. So, and I hear you, but, and it has to be validated that these are structurally proper engineer drawings and everything, but that's where the data comes from. And so it's not just write a speech or fix my email for me. The power that's behind this, and that's what they're calling the narrow intelligence.
Yes.
But the message is so confused. We're going to have now intelligence taking over human thinking, which we have was given to all of us. Different, but it was given. So I'm afraid that you're going to put tomorrow in the hands of mechanical or computer things that we have to control.
Yeah.
And that is very dangerous.
AI is a tool and it needs oversight, human in the loop. It's really augmenting the productivity. But please, Chief.
Yeah. Oh, I just wanted to add that comment. The comment here about human in the loop is how we still have to make the decisions. And I think it touches on your point, Mr. Cortellucci, about we can't have and this is where we were talking about some technologies that were used the wrong way in the past, where they were using the technology to point to something and then police were just moving in that direction. Can't do that. That's why the human in the loop piece is really important. We can make the decisions. We use the AI piece as a tool. We can't bury our heads in the sand on AI though. It is happening now faster. I mean, it seems like only about a year or two ago we were talking about the AI coming about in society, and now look where we are just a couple of years later. And I suspect I'm no expert by any means, but and it's going to just continue to get faster and faster, and we have to harness it to help, from our perspective, keep the community safe. And we see lots of opportunities to do that. I think to me, it's about walk before you run in some instances and run when you can in others, right? And there are others where we can run quickly, like on the administrative tasks. There's a lot of things can be done, already being done. But there's others where we definitely need to walk before we run, and the governance around the whole thing is the critical piece, which is the whole message here today. And we're working within that framework.
Member Taylor, and then Member Bodenstein, and then.
Thanks very much. Yeah. First of all, I just want to say I hope our chief's intelligence isn't artificial. Great presentation, and I think often I've been in a lot of presentations in AI and conferences and presentations, and often we just end up having a discussion, debate about is it really scary or very scary or not scary. But as has been stated, it's here, and it's going to be here more tomorrow and the next day, so we have to take the steps we should responsibly work with, manage it, and leverage it. I'm on the side of I think it's an incredibly exciting opportunity. I think it's going to cure diseases. I think it's going to help policing. I can't wait. I've seen some real life examples on basic levels that are already incredibly exciting. But I do think this work is really important to help us. So I just asked if you can flip to slide 13. And I'm sure this was done, but my question, sort of from the governance perspective, is this piece is a very good piece. I've never seen it put this way. I like it. But what's really important is what's the criteria, and who and how do you define very low or high? Because if that's off or inconsistent, it's all meaningless. So I assume you went through some work, and with our team also, on how that gets done. Right. Have we actually run a few? I assume we're already using AI a little bit in some examples. We run some of them through this. Did we do some hypothetical cases? Are you or somebody else going to work with us on an ongoing basis to look at some of the first examples of what are the many examples over a period of time, to ensure that this part is because I think this is the critical part.
Yeah, no, thank you. And others can comment, but yes, we are collaborating on this. In our initial work, we did look at a number of use cases to to kind of test the waters on how we would classify. And so the policy is being generated now by your colleagues here. And that framework of how to assess and triage the use cases is something that does need more work, but we are ready to continue to go down that path. But we did look at a handful of use cases and as experiments of where would this be in the classification, and does the committee have the ability to oversee, you know, these use cases, and or what more do they need to do? But more work is needed on that framework. But there's a great start with the policy draft that I think is developed.
So so that policy draft includes what criteria, or is it like 5 questions you ask with a scale of 1 to 5, and is it a committee of 3 or 5 people? And
maybe I can just jump in here. Well, I haven't seen the policy yet, but I know we're within 2 or 3 weeks of having the final draft. If anybody at the back here, Greg probably, Stanisi, I'll introduce Greg from our business intelligence section. Greg, you can maybe comment on that, if you don't mind. Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Chief, and through you, Chair. To answer this question, we have done work with NuEnergy on taking this framework and applying it to our own organization and the technologies we have been exploring or made aware of through our vendors. So we do see those questions informing how we've moved forward and how to classify our technology. So this is not formalized, it's not official, it's only been done as a proof of concept, I would say. NuEnergy has helped us review at least 9 different AI types of technology. We're not saying that we've been using these 9 technologies, but we've taken the most common use cases we know of in law enforcement and put them through this type of a framework to determine how would that type of technology come out with respect to what type of AI governance, what type of guardrails, and what level of community engagement, board engagement, ELT engagement would they require. So this is very much still in development, and we are very excited about this opportunity, but it is very complicated. So hopefully that helps.
Yeah, and I would say, as any comments on any specific technology, we would definitely explore that in private, not here in the public session. But we're going to continue to work with the team and move towards a more robust way of understanding how and when we should and engage, to Greg's point, on whether it's community, whether it's board, whether it's even us, depending on what level of risk we're at. That's all to be determined still, but it's well underway. And I think to Mayor Taylor, to your point, an incredibly exciting opportunity here for the organization and the board to really move this forward. And as fast a pace as we can, being mindful of the impacts depending on what the technology is we're talking about at any given time. So anyways, I'll leave it there, but unless...
Well, I guess what I'd say is, look, it's not the most important or thing about AI, but we're talking about governance of AI. And so to me, it comes down to this.
Yeah.
And what I'm hearing is we haven't landed yet on how we're going to categorize very low versus high. And I think that's critical. So I think that probably should come back to us at some point. And is it fair to assume you're working with us still until that is completed? And will it be embedded in the policy? It shouldn't be a committee of 3 or 5 people sitting around and saying, okay, what do you think? Is this moderate or low? Well, it could be, because it's got to be pretty nailed down, because the consistency of the measurement is also important. So I'd be very curious about where we go with that, because I think it's at the core of the governance portion of what we're doing.
Yeah. Thank you, Chief. We have established a governance committee with the assistance of NuEnergy at York Regional Police, and that was something originally started with Deputy Hammond. With that committee, we have representation of every major service area in our organization, so the directors or executive directors of all those areas are part of this committee, representing both SOAR and civilian. All those committee members have been a part of the NuEnergy training, because as you have all seen, the topic is very complex, and in order to govern, as Niraj pointed out, you must have the proper education. So that's where we've started educating all those governance committee members and informing our process. And we've been doing this throughout 2025 to prepare ourselves and also to protect ourselves and our organization and the community in this work. So we definitely have this in place as far as the governance committee goes, but as we all know, the policies are still to come and still require that level of engagement that I know is going on.
So I guess I'll leave it at this, but I guess what I still don't know, and that's fine, but I hope to know at some point is, will the policy have it in it that goes to the governance committee about how this is specifically adjudicated? Is it a 5-category scale of 5, that the committee discusses and pegs it at, or how is, I don't know enough to know how it should be done, but I think it needs to be very defined. And so I'd be interested in that. The last thing I'd leave you with is I think this is important and something that might not get thought of, but the committee, I don't know if it's 3 or 5 or 15, but some level of consistency with that committee over time. Because if you have, 6 of 7 leave in 1 year, because some of it is kind of level setting with the group, right? So I think about that too, with the turnover, and that it's gradual maybe or something. But anyway, I hope we can hear more about this at some point.
Mr. Chair, through you, Jason Fraser.
Jason. Mayor Taylor, through you, Mr. Chair. Legal's on one of the various members on the committee, and I have the privilege of being the legal representative on the committee. And to answer that question, working with our IT people and with the other areas of the organization, what the policy will ultimately include is a framework for doing just that. It'll be broader, but modeled in some respects on the privacy impact assessment that we currently do for all of the things that we engage with where there may be privacy issues. For AI issues, we will develop that same sort of assessment. And I think up to how many questions now on this? There are approximately 60 questions on the current version of that, so that as you go through, and this is information that will be obtained from the vendor, information that will be obtained from the specific area that's looking to use whatever technology is, and gathering all that information and running it through these series of questions, and the questions will lead to scoring to make sure that we have the information that we need, and to come up with ultimately a rubric that's going to get us in the appropriate class, but with a process that will be relatively objective, while at the same time having the committee process to make sure that we don't become dogmatic to a score. No, the score is 57.2 and all of a sudden that's that. But to make sure that ultimately we've got a process that's going to be robust and consistent, with a committee that will allow us to continue to, because we got to measure the measurement too, to make sure as we go along that we continue to ask the right and relevant questions.
Okay, well, I'd love to hear more about that at some point. Thank you.
Thank you. Through the chair, is a very interesting presentation. And I was just want to make a comment and jump back to the previous conversation with that member Cordellucci, and we were having about the use cases of it. And and in my day job in science, this use of AI is a little bit more mature, and we've been using this sort of technology, whether it be computer-aided design for new drug compounds in the pharmacology field, since I started it back in 2012. And the University of Toronto has full centers called the Acceleration Consortium. I'm sure you're familiar, where it's a whole center dedicated to making autonomous labs using AI. So I think my point to all this is just sort of saying is that, like, this technology may seem new in this context, but it's actually fairly mature in where we are at it, where I've been using it already. And I know from in the medical field, obviously different from implications than the policing field, I know a lot of medical doctors as well that will openly use AI. And I think it goes a lot to your comment that it's already here. People are using it. And I think it's really highlighting that this is inevitable, that we're just sort of developing that tools. And I think it's important, like you said, AI is a tool. It's not a means to sort of direct people, but I think a lot of us already in sort of fields that have embraced it kind of use it as a sort of a jumping off point where we can get from A to Z a little bit quicker, because we could do the same thing and run similar simulations, and mechanical engineers do the same thing, whether it's in CAD software running simulations. AI is just sort of expedite that a little bit and so I think it's a really important conversation. So I thank you for your presentation and insights. Thank you.
Don't know if there's any questions in there for you. Member